With talks underway between Bahraini rulers and the opposition, it looks like the Al Khalifa regime is keen to turn things back to normal. But has 5 months of popular protests against the brutal crackdown changed everything for the Persian Gulf Kingdom? I'm Mohammed, and this is another edition of News Analysis.
The government and the opposition are attending a new round of talks that are part of what is called national dialogue. The talks are aimed at ending the political deadlock in Bahrain. Only Al-Wafaq and Al-Wad opposition parties are participating. They say they constitute only 10% of those attending the talks. Other opposition groups, including Haq Movement and Bahrain Free Movement, have boycotted the talks. The crackdown on anti-regime protesters is continuing across Bahrain, while the opposition and the government are in the middle of their talks. Down with Hamad, that's what these young protesters are shouting, demanding the fall of the Bahraini king, whose clan has ruled for 2 centuries. Saudi-backed security forces have consistently used violence to crush the uprising of the Bahraini people. Riyadh has become the protector and patron for Bahrain's ruling monarchy against the domino effect of revolutions initiated by the January uprising in Tunisia. That's why it's deployed forces there. The opposition considers the Saudi military presence in the country as part of Bahrain's problems, not the solution. The opposition says dialogue with the regime will get nowhere unless people are able to elect the government and see an end to what they call long-running systematic discrimination against the majority of Bahrainis.
Well, let's get more now from Mohammed Al-Maskati, head of the Youth Society on Human Rights, joining us via Skype from Manama. I'd also like to welcome Professor Colin Cavell with the Holyoke Community College, joining us live from Seattle. And I'll start my first question with Mr. Maskati in Manama. Mr. Maskati, there's been widespread disappointment in the opposition's decision to join those talks, as we could say the wounds inflicted on protesters are still raw, as you know well yourself. Activists are angry over the sentencing of 8 opposition figures to life in prison. There's been reports of torture in jails as well. Should Wafaq and Wad have first asked for the release of those prisoners and an end to the clampdown before starting the national dialogue?
Actually, the opposition on the national dialogue, they only 10% from the whole the national dialogue. Especially, you talk about 300 participants on the national dialogue. So any decisions will be voted. So the vote, it will be not fair, especially that the opposition, though they work for a long time trying to speak with the authorities about the problems, about the political issues, they only have 10% from this dialogue. It will not succeed to what the people want and what the political parties and society ask for it. And at the same time, you speak about the opposition who inside the jail, and that's correct. Especially that, like Islamic Action Society, it led by the Mr. Mohammed Al-Mahfoub, and here also inside the jail, and they put their names on the table without any candidates. That means the main opposition also inside the jail. So it's not fair that the national dialogue not take them as part of talks, especially that the talks, it's not between the Sunni and Shia. The talks must be between the opposition and the authorities.
Right. Well, Colin Cavell, I'd just like to put that question to you. Despite the facts that were just mentioned there by Mr. Maskati of the human rights situation in Bahrain, of the torture taking place reportedly of those political opposition members who are in prison, and that's why they can't join the national dialogue. Now, we are seeing, however, that the national dialogue has started. Al-Wafaq and Wad, two of the opposition parties, have joined it. So do you think this is, however, a step in the right direction, or as some are calling it, is just a gesture to appease the international community?
Omar, this is the national monologue is a one-way talk between the king and himself. It is not a dialogue, and it is a sham, it is a farce, and the only way that this dialogue, supposed dialogue, can have any positive outcome is if the regime makes the minimal concession of allowing the position of Prime Minister to be elected or placed by the largest electoral party or society in the National Assembly. That is the minimal concession that will make any positive step forward. Other than that, the entire monologue will be a sham.
You're calling it a monologue. That I'd just like to put that to Mr. Maskati. We are seeing, Mr. Maskati, part of the opposition, although it is a small part, however, taking part in these talks. Would you agree, though, that there is not going to be any results that would help the revolution movement in Bahrain?
Actually, as the mechanism, what the dialogue take it from the beginning, the mechanism of the dialogue is that it's not be a result. It is a recommendation. Get it from the what we call it, from the participate, and these recommendations will send it to the king, and the king will see this recommendation and take what he wants, and sure he will review some of them. So the problem is there is no result, there is no orders. We can get it from the dialogue. It's only recommendation send it to the king. So how it will help the people if the king is refused most of the recommendations, or accept the recommendation? I'm sure the recommendation is not what the people want, because like the 14th February group is not a part of this dialogue.
All right, well, let's see where this dialogue idea originally came from. I'd like to put this question to Colin now. Colin, is it, do you think, Washington that's advised the monarch now to open talks, quote, with all options on the table? Rather, how strong an influence do you think the U.S. has on the monarch's policies? Because we did saw the very harsh crackdown on the protests, which of course was supported from the GCC members as well, and we'll come back to that later. But I'd like to point to the U.S.'s role right here, and tell us if you think this is some advice that the United States is currently giving the Bahraini monarch.
Absolutely, Omar. Sure, the United States has told Crown Prince Salman bin Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, as well as King Hamad, the same thing, that they must allow the position of Prime Minister to have some democratic aspect to it. And the only way that, the minimal possible way that can happen, is to allow the largest party in the National Assembly to appoint the Prime Minister. So for the U.S., they have told this to the Crown Prince, they have told this to the King, logically. Whether the two can do that and gang up on one of the richest men in the world, it's very questionable.
Mr. Maskati,
yes. I don't see it.
All right,
happening.
Let's go back to Mr. Maskati on this now. Mr. Maskati, speaking of the U.S. advising the Bahraini regime to kind of try to respond to the international criticism that it is getting, first of all, do you think that this is a decision that the Bahraini government has made on its own, or that it was asked to do so?
Actually, the authorities, they don't have another options. You cannot solve the problem in Bahrain without real dialogue. So the first time they choose to have repression on the protest, and they failed, and they saw how the people are still going to protest in the street. Still there is demonstrations in different villages, so it's kind of the repression is not succeed with the people. So now they choose to have a dialogue, but actually until now, not me as a human rights defender, the politicians say that this dialogue is not effective. Today is the first session of the dialogue. They say it's a kind of conferences talking about what the organizer gives them to talk. So I don't think so. Only because of
right.
The United States is trying to push the authorities. I think the authorities also saw that it's not succeed with using this kind of repression against the demonstrators.
Right, I'd just like to welcome Mr. Raza Kazim with the Islamic Human Rights Commission. I'm hearing he's just joining us now live from London, and I'd like to put the question now to him. Mr. Kazim, thanks for joining us. The first question I put to our guests today was the fact that whether they think this national dialogue process in Bahrain is going to help at all. Do you think, as the Moroccan king did call for reforms in Morocco and people called it mere window dressing, that the same goes now for the national dialogue process in Bahrain?
I think when we talk about a national dialogue process that is supposed to be taking place, what are the conditions under which it is actually taking place? There are many people that have been put on trial who have been demonstrating peacefully. If you want a dialogue, you need to start from the basis that all political prisoners need to be freed. You need to make sure that those people that have perpetrated this violence, what accountability is there going to be? What surety is there going to be? There is no point in saying that you're having some kind of a national dialogue. And I heard one of the earlier speakers talking about the idea that Washington is pushing for a dialogue. I think it could possibly be pushing for the dialogue. Quite frankly, that is laughable, because Washington has got its naval fleet based there in Bahrain, and you would expect that if they really wanted to exert pressure, they could have done so very, very early on. They want this repression to continue. They want to, in the forefront, the Saudis to take the lead role in this, in order that they can make this into a sectarian issue. And it is precisely this that needs to be countered. One, the idea of somehow that the US is an honest peace broker or is pushing for some kind of dialogue. Secondly, this idea that somehow this is a sectarian issue.
All right, I'll just go back to Colin now and put that question to him. Colin, the thing is, and I'd like to address this to Mr. Kazim as well here, what people have been saying, political observers have been saying, Mr. Kazim, on this, is that the US is actually not looking for regime change, in their words, it's looking for regime alteration in Bahrain. And I'd like to go with this question to Colin now. Colin, why do you think, or what is the rationale behind the approach that the United States government is taking on Bahrain? Do you think it is looking for that regime alteration, keeping the fundamentals of the structure of government rather than changing the regime?
Yes, Omar. I'm not saying that the U.S. is an honest broker in this process. No, what it's looking for is to maintain its hegemonic control of the region. And in order to do that, it has to replace the autocratic leaders it has been supporting for the last 40, 50 years with a new generation of leaders. And they have to make some minimal window dressing with democratic appendages to make it appear that it is popular. And the minimal concession that must be made in Bahrain for there to be democratic peace and for there to be continued foreign investment in the country is for the Prime Minister, the position of Prime Minister, to be appointed by the largest electoral party in the National Assembly. Now, that is what the U.S. would ultimately like to happen. Otherwise, there will be no civil peace in Bahrain, and there will be a continuous decline in foreign direct investment in the country.
Well, let's speak about the U.S. interests that are in Bahrain now and why we're seeing the stance that we are seeing from the U.S. administration on Bahrain. Mr. Maskati, we know, of course, that the U.S. Fifth Fleet is in Bahrain and it's referred to as the U.S. Navy's main regional outpost. Very important, then, in strategic terms for the United States. Is there reason to believe, however, that another form of government, so to speak, in Bahrain would threaten U.S. interests there?
I don't think so that the problem now with the Fifth Fleet, because no one in the protest asked the United States to take off the Fifth Fleet. So it's not comparing between this government and another government. The question is, why the interest of the United States with these authorities is that I think because they get support not from only the Bahraini authorities, also they need to get support also from the Saudi Arabia authority. So it's like a true government support. It's not only the Bahraini support or the Fifth Fleet.
All right, Raza Kazim, the U.S. has maintained a close alliance with Persian Gulf monarchies. A reference, of course, here we can make to the $60 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia that it's made. It is keeping that security cooperation going with other Persian Gulf states as well. How do you think it's prepared to face the changing geopolitical positions or status in the region if we are indeed seeing geopolitical changes in the region?
I think one of the things that we need to remember regarding this is that they are not just trying to protect the naval fleet that is based in Bahrain and what will potentially come out of that, because that is an issue. But one of the problems that they have is that they're worried, and Saudi Arabia is worried, that if Bahrain falls and goes into accepting the will of the people, there are issues that will start to arise. There are turbulence within Saudi Arabia itself from 2 or 3 different major groupings who are against the Saudi regime and the way that it is continuing to have the interest of the Americans being followed in all international politics and so on, and suppressing the people of Saudi Arabia itself, and by dividing and ruling, so that there is this sectarianism being promoted within Saudi Arabia, so that the people that exist are not going to be able to cooperate to try and overthrow the monarchy. So I think there is that aspect of it, the geopolitical, that one of the things that they wanted to do by tackling Bahrain, by sending Saudi forces into Bahrain, was this idea of making sure that they go on the offensive. They don't let Bahrain fall because they're worried that Saudi Arabia could be next. They're worried about Yemen, they're worried about all of these things that are happening in the Middle East, and geopolitically that would be a major blow to US interests.
I'd just like to go back to Colin. In the remaining minutes that we have left on this programme, I'd like to get all of our guests' view on what lies ahead for Bahrain. Colin, if you could just tell us, do you think that the strategy that the Bahraini government is taking, the crackdown, we are seeing it continue, do you think that this crackdown is going to continue, or it might even lead to other serious military confrontations?
Absolutely, the crackdown will continue. The arrests, the detention, the disappearances of anybody who opposes the regime will continue. The dialogue is an attempt for the Bahraini regime to say the reconciliation is on the way and business is back to normal. But as I said, unless that minimal concession is made, these national dialogue, or as I call it, monologue, will amount to nothing.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left. I'll just put this last question to Mohammed Al-Maskati. If you could tell us in 30 seconds, Mr. Maskati, are you hopeful that there will be a future democratic Bahrain?
We hope to have a democratic in Bahrain, but as we see it now, it's not very soon, because still the authorities have repression on the protesters and demonstrators.
Right. All right, Mr. Maskati, I've got to stop you there. We've run out of time. A big thank you to Mohammed Al-Maskati, head of the Youth Society on Human Rights in Manama, Professor Colin Cavell with the Holyoke Community College in Seattle, and Mr. Raza Kazim with the Islamic Human Rights Commission in London. Thanks so much for being with us. From me, Mohammed, and our team here in Tehran, it's goodbye.